in. And with that said, I'm going to turn to the topic of today's Lunch and Learn, which is how you can use GuideStar Premium subscriptions to research compensation at peer organizations, which will allow you to establish fair and reasonable compensation for your organization. And I say that I'm focusing on GuideStar Premium subscriptions because we do have a service called GuideStar Premium Pay-As-You-Go, or a product, a delivery model called GuideStar Premium Pay-As-You-Go, which allows you to purchase a single report for an individual nonprofit. And you get a tremendous amount of data with it, but the pay-as-you-go option doesn't give you the advanced search tools, the search refinement tools, and the data management tools that you get with GuideStar Premium subscriptions. If you want more information on GuideStar Premium subscriptions, you can go up to Products, the link at the top of almost every page on our site. Then on the right, click GuideStar Premium. On the left, click GuideStar Premium subscriptions, and this page will tell you all sorts of things about what you can get with GuideStar Premium subscriptions. So the first thing I'm going to do in establishing in researching compensation for a specific nonprofit is to create a peer group. And to do that, I'm going to go to Advanced Search. And there are a couple of ways you can get to our Advanced Search page. I'm logged in as a GuideStar Premium subscriptions user, and if you're not on our home page, you'll see this blue bar near the top of the page, and one of the options is Advanced Search. And you go there, and there you have it. If you're on the home page, you can get to the Advanced Search by going to the right of the Search GuideStar label and clicking on the link there. And the reason I'm using Advanced Search is because, as I said, I need to create a peer group. And the reason I need to create a peer group is because IRS regulations governing nonprofit compensation let you pay market rate. And in training materials for its agents, the IRS defines market rate as compensation levels paid by similarly situated organizations for functionally comparable positions. And by similarly situated, they mean organizations that are of the same size, that have similar missions or fields of activity. Geography can also be a factor. It just depends on what type of organization you are benchmarking and what type of candidates, the availability of candidates. Some organizations have specialized needs and they have to do national searches. Others can fill with a local or regional search, and in those cases, the geography is going to be particularly important in making sure that you are doing paying comparable compensation to what your peers do. And the reason you have to do this is that you need to be able to justify the executive compensation levels you offer. And I should specify, we pull the compensation data from IRS Form 990 and 990 EZPF, and for the most part, that's going to give you your senior people, your executive information. And that's okay, because that's really what the IRS is focusing on. If you can't justify that your executive compensation levels are on par with what peer organizations offer, the IRS can hit you with fines, or they can hit actually the person who is paid what they feel is an overcompensation with fines, and the board members who approve it, which I'll get into at the end after I've done the demo. And the other issue is compensation is a hot button issue for donors and other members of the public, and you have to be able to explain to people, if your organization offers market level compensation, that you have to be able to show people that not every nonprofit can be run by a volunteer, and that not every nonprofit can be run by people who are taking a vow of poverty, although the vast majority of people involved with nonprofits, even those who receive compensation, probably are receiving under market rate, but there are certain types of jobs and missions that can't be accomplished using volunteers and people who are working for just a pittance. And we've all seen the news articles with the outrage about how the head of X, Y, or Z nonprofit is earning this much money, and isn't that terrible? So to maintain public trust, you have to be able to show particularly your organization's supporters, but the public in general, why your compensation practices are justified. And the IRS report on nonprofit hospitals in February 2009 had a statement in it that I think sums up pretty well the issue of nonprofit executive compensation in the public's eyes. And what it said was, for some, there may be a disconnect between what, as members of the public, they might consider reasonable and what is permitted under the tax law. So just to stay on the right side of the IRS and to help bridge that gap between public expectations and reality for many organizations, having the data is the way to go. So let me show you a couple of searches, how you can use GuideStar Premium to establish a peer group, how you can refine it to research, refine your search results to research nonprofit compensation. In this case, I'm going to say that I am looking into compensation for a Los Angeles area museum, and it's a large organization. So for my search criteria, in advanced search, I'm going to use the Los Angeles Metropolitan Statistical Area, and that is the area, the definition provided by the Office of Management and Budget. It's the one that the census uses. So under the MSA field, I'm going to select Los Angeles, Long Beach, California. I'm going to scroll down a little more, and in categories, I'm going to pick museums. And, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, MSA is only available through GuideStar Premium subscriptions as a field to search on. And then the nonprofit that I am benchmarking, the museum I'm benchmarking, is a 501c3 public charity. So I'm going to select that as also one of my criteria. And IRS subsection is another one of the fields that is only available through GuideStar Premium subscriptions. And then I'm going to scroll down to income, and I'm going to pick greater than 10 million. I'm going to click search. I've got my search results now. And so I start looking through, and I'm saying, okay, these guys are really big. But okay, let's look at the Autry National Center of the American West. Well, first I look at my results, and I say, okay, I've got 10 results. All right. I think I'm going to save this search, and I do that by going up to the GuideStar Premium toolbox, which is at the top of the search results page, and I click Save under Save Searches, and I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to call it, I'm going to call it LA MSA Museums. And that means that I can save my search criteria. I can run this search again. And the way I can run that search is if I do another search and then come back, or if I go to another page, I can get to it either from the toolbox, or I can even go up to my account and under Save Searches, you'll see I have two listed here. The one I just did was LA MSA Museums, so there we go. So looking at them, I go through and I scroll through and I think, okay, we aren't as big as Museum Associates. We aren't as big as the Huntington Library and Art Gallery. We're maybe the Autry National Center of the American West. And one of the things I can do is I can actually save organizations to a list so that I can look at them later. And the way I do that is I can go under the organization's name and click Add to My Saved Organizations. And so right now I have one. I'll do the Arm & Hammer Museum of Art and Cultural Center. It has a $10 million budget. Add to My Saved Organizations. And then, let me see if I've got any others. And the Children's Museum of Art of Los Angeles. So again, I'll add that one to my saved organizations. Now, if I want to look at only my saved organizations, I can do that by clicking on Manage Saved Organizations, or I could go to the top of the page and I can, here are my saved organizations. I can view them from here, or again, I could go up to my account. This time I think I'll do it from the Premium Toolbox. So here are my 3 organizations. The IRS policy is that if an organization has an annual gross revenue of $1 million or less, 3 comparables or 3 peer organizations are adequate for researching your compensation practices. They don't, however, have a specific number recommended for larger organizations. All I can say is, it's got to be more than 3. So how do you actually research compensation once you've identified organizations you want to look at? What you do, you click on the organization's name, and and then it comes up. There's a People tab in the report. So you can go to the People tab, and if you scroll down, below the description of the director and below the board of directors listing, and you're going to get to officers for fiscal year. And one of the things GuideStar Premium subscriptions gives you is access to all of the information we've digitized, that is hand-keyed from the 990s that we receive from the IRS for a particular organization. In this case, we have 990s going back. We've got almost a full run, 99, 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, we've got a run from 99 through 2009, and we even have a 1996, which was one of the earliest ones we have in the database. So if I was actually interested in maybe tracing what the head of the Audrey Museum had been paid over 3 years, I could click here just on 2007, go back to 2007, look at 2008, look at 2009. And you'll see here we have the president and CEO, the vice president for development, you've got a chief operating officer, and they all have compensation. Then if you go to the bottom of the page, you also have highest paid employees and their compensation. And again, you have a director of human resources, a vice president for exhibitions, your director of major gifts, your director of marketing. So those are also good resources for benchmarking compensation. And again, if I click up here at the top of this, the officers list for 2007, then when you go to highest paid employees and their compensation, it also is going to be for 2007. So that is how you research the compensation paid at an individual organization. But as I look at this, I think, okay, my organization in the LA area is actually an art museum with an income of $4 million. And it really requires specialized knowledge to either lead this organization or be to be the head of the organization or be part of the leadership. So I want to refine my search. And I can do that by going up to the top of the page to the blue bar, and under the advanced search link is a refine your search link. I click on that, and in this case I'm going to scroll down to the category, and I had museums listed. Well, I know why. I was on my saved searches. Let me just redo that real quickly. Here's my saved search. It was LA MSA Museums. Now I'm going to refine my search. And I'm going to scroll down, and look, categories is selected. Well, there actually is a National Taxonomy of Exempt Entities code, which is a code that classifies nonprofits basically by each one's primary mission. There is a code for art museums, and I can get to that by, under the NTE code field, clicking to the right of to view a list of NTE codes. And if I look, and I scroll down, Arts and Humanities is in A, and I look, A51 is art museums. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the categories to all categories, and I'm going to search by the NTE code A51. I'm also going to change my budget range from greater than 10 million to 2.5 million to 5 million because the organization I'm benchmarking has an annual income of 4 million. And then I'm going to click here, click search, and I come up with 2 results. Now, I had more than that last time. I know why. I very foolishly neglected to make my search national. So here in the search results, I'm going to take out the MSA field, and now I get 53 results. And I'm going to save that search because I don't want to make the same mistake again with the MSA. So I'm going to say National Art Museums. So I've saved my search. And I'm looking through here and I'm saying, okay, this looks pretty good. Some of these are lower, some aren't. Okay, my organization's income is 4 million. So the San Antonio Museum of Art's income is 4 million. I can compare up to 4 organizations at one time by clicking here to add to my comparison set underneath an organization's name. And then I'm going to look for another one that's close to 4 million. I'll do the Telfair Museum of Art. I will add it to my comparison set. Grand Rapids Art Museum, add to my comparison set. And I'll do the Butler Institute of American Art. Again, I can now access my comparison set by clicking the Compare Now link, or, and you've probably already guessed this, I can go to the top of the page and I can click Compare in the toolbox, or I can go up to my account and I can click View Comparison Set. And again, I mentioned that if an organization's income is 1 million or less, 3 comparables will do. Well, say that these organizations had incomes of 1 million or less. If my organization was one of the 4 here and I had 3 peer organizations, I could save this particular comparison set as a PDF, or I could print a hard copy. And that's going to suffice for the IRS as establishing who my comparisons are. So you see that you've got all 4 organizations and the different fields are matched up so that you can go from organization across the board from organization to organization. And I look here, and even though their income is 4 million and something, I see that total expenses varies from 5.5 million to 6.7 million and down to 2.3. So I start thinking and I go, okay, maybe what I really want to do is use expenses as my criteria for finding the organizations, or the first criterion for finding organizations like mine. So what I could do is I could download information on them. And you'll see here that they do display the highest paid employees and salaries. If we are able to clearly identify who the head of an organization is, and we can't always do that because nonprofits use different names for the head of an organization. It can be executive director, it can be president, it can be CEO, and they may put them in different parts of the form. Then we will display that information here. It just happens for these 4 organizations we don't have that. So in this case, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, this is a good example. If I find 4 organizations or 3 organizations that are like mine, this would be a good thing, presentation or document to have to show that these organizations really are parallel to mine. And then I could go into their individual reports from here just by clicking on one of the links and get the additional research I need to document compensation there. In this case, however, though, as I said, I'm thinking what I really want to do is I want to download my results, and I just called up the search, the national search that was specifically for art museums. I want to download data on these results and download data on these organizations and put them in a spreadsheet. And GuideStar Premium subscriptions gives you the option of downloading up to 5,000 records a month. And a record is information on a single nonprofit. if you run a record or run the same search or download the same information on the same nonprofit twice, that counts as 2 downloads. So we have 53 results in this particular search result set. And again, there are a couple ways I can add them to my comparison set. I could, not comparison set, to my download queue. I could do them individually just by clicking Add to Download Queue under each one's name, or I can go up to my toolbox and in the download queue, I can add all results. That's what I'm going to do this time. And once again, I can then get to the download queue from either the pop-up box, the premium toolbox, or I could go up to my account. In this case, I'm going to do it from the pop-up box. You'll see that I have 53 organizations ready to download. You'll also see a little tally over on the right that I've already downloaded 8 this month. I have 4,992 downloads left, and a reminder that my monthly limit is 5,000. And the monthly limit kicks over on the first of each month. So I have to select which organizations I want to download from this list, and in this case, I want to download them all. Now, if I actually wanted to delete an organization, if I wanted to delete all 53, I could do that just by clicking Delete Selected. Or I could have selected them. Will it unselect them? No. I could have just selected them individually and deleted them. But in this case, I want to download them. So I'm going to go up to Download My Queue, click on that. I have to give it a name. So I'm going to call it National Art Museums. I have the choice of saving it as a CSV file or a pipe delimited file. I know CSV can be imported into Excel. I've done it. I think I've also uploaded or imported pipe delimited files into Excel. I know I've imported them into Access. The fields that you can download are preset. The first 3, employer identification number, organization name, and year, are mandatory. You don't have the choice. The others, you can mix and match as you want. In this case, I don't particularly care what their mailing address is. I do want to know what the city and the organization's income is. The subsection code, I don't need that because I already picked 501c3s. Then from the body of the 99D, the program expenses, administrative expenses, funding expenses, total expenses, assets, total liabilities, NTE code, I happen to know it's A51, so I'm going to not pick that one. In this case, though, I do want these financial fields because, again, I'm trying to find the organizations that parallel mine as closely as possible because that's going to give me the best defense should the IRS come and say, we think your compensation's off. So I can save these fields for future downloads just by clicking that box, and it's really easy in the future to adjust them. I can just add and remove, and then I'm going to click Create File. And you will see that my file, National Arts Museums, and my CSV file was created today, 11/15. It's available for 30 days, and there's a nice little reminder here that I can download this as many times as I want. This particular file that only counts as one download because the download counts when you go from your download queue to your download dashboard. It's available to me until December 15th. To look at the file, all I do is click on the name, and I can save it to my hard drive, or in this case, I'm going to open it so I can show it to you. It will look like an Excel file. And right now, I'm looking at total expenses. So I could go through, and let's say I'm looking for total expenses around $4 million. I can sort here. I can sort by total expenses, smallest to largest. And if I scroll down, you'll see that I have found several organizations that fall in the $4 million expense category. And then I could start refining by looking at the other fields as well to pick as many of my organizations as peers as I want to. And the reason I want to do this is when push comes to shove, as I said, if the IRS asks you about the compensation for a particular organization, for your organization, or if you're in a particular organization, they say, we think this is too high. If you have the documentation that you've done your research and that you base the decision on appropriate research. It's called establishing a rebuttable presumption. And the IRS may say, well, you can't pay that level anymore, but you're not going to get fined. If, however, you didn't do your research or you didn't document it properly, and the IRS finds that there has been a repayment, the person who is overpaid must repay the amount of the overpayment to the organization with interest. The IRS can also impose fines, popularly known as intermediate sanctions, on the person who was overpaid and the board members who approved that overpayment, or a board member who knew about the overpayment, didn't approve it, but also didn't do anything to prevent it. And if the IRS chooses to impose intermediate sanctions, the person who is overpaid it's 25% of the overpayment. So if someone was paid $500,000 and the IRS determines that the appropriate compensation, fair and reasonable compensation, was $400,000, they were overpaid $100,000, and the IRS imposes intermediate sanctions on that person, they're looking at paying $25,000 out of their own pocket to the IRS. If the IRS chooses to impose intermediate sanctions on the board members, they're looking at 10% of the overpayment, up to $20,000 per transaction. So again, if our overpayment is $100,000, the board members who approved it are looking at $10,000 each. In March 2007, the IRS reported that its agents had recommended more than $21 million in excise taxes or intermediate sanctions for excessive compensation. And that $21 million involved only 40 people at only 25 organizations. If the overpayment is egregious enough, if it's an indication of the organization basically flaunting the tax code in other ways as well, the IRS can even revoke a nonprofit's tax-exempt status. And to prevent that, that's where the research comes in, creating the rebuttable presumption. And to create a rebuttable presumption, the board must approve compensation in advance. And as part of that process, the board must ensure that no one who participates in the decision has a conflict of interest concerning this transaction. The second thing the board has to do is base its decision on comparability data obtained before it approved the compensation. And the third thing is the board has to document its decision-making process at the time it approves the compensation. The board does all of that. As I said, the IRS may say, okay, this compensation is too high, and you can't pay it anymore, but you're going to avoid the imposition of intermediate sanctions. So I will now look. I see we have at least one question. Let me look and see if we have any others. All right. Name and year of the IRS. Will you please repeat the name and year of the report, IRS report on hospitals? Yes. It was the IRS report on nonprofit hospitals. The year was February 2009. Is it available on the IRS website? Yes, it is. I never find the search for the IRS website particularly helpful, but you can try 2009 report on IRS hospitals. The other thing is, too, we have it on our website, and you can use the knowledge base. If you have GuideStar Premium subscriptions, you can use a knowledge base search, watch this not work, and look up nonprofit hospitals, because I linked to it, hospitals, from at least one article. IRS increases, there we go, nonprofit hospitals. Did I link to it from here? All right. Well, I know I've linked to it from at least one article, and I don't want to take any more time looking for it. And this is February 2007. But it is available now. Is the income the revenue from the 990, Part 1, Line 12? I believe that is still the correct number, but yes. I thought only key employees needed to be listed, and one part of the definition is a salary of at least how much, 115 in any event more than some of those people listed here. The IRS has just changed the criteria for listing, or within the last couple of years, as part of the revision of the 990, has changed the criteria. Key employees have to be listed, and the key employee is, and I don't have the numbers with me, it's someone who is paid a certain amount, something like $150,000 or $175,000, who has basically significant control over the organization, and who is one of the top 20 people paid by the organization. But anyone who earns more than 100, or the top 5 employees who are not key employees, who earn more than $100,000 a year, are also listed. And that's actually, the only change there is instead of being $50,000, it's now $100,000 a year. They used to be listed on Schedule A. Now they are actually listed in Part 7, which is also where your key employees are listed. So yeah, there is a cutoff there, and that's why really the data, the compensation information you find in GuideStar Premium is going to skew toward your executive staff, because they're the ones who are most often reported on the 990. Do you know if the IRS compensation guidelines applies to a 501c5 nonprofit organization? If so, do you know where on the IRS website it gives the compensation stuff? My understanding is that if an organization is tax exempt, the rules that I described here apply, period. Tax exempt is tax exempt. The information is on the IRS website. You can go to the charities and nonprofits section. You can try the search. If you go to the charities and nonprofits section, and this can also work for the earlier question, there are all sorts of FAQs and topics that are addressed. Look at the first page that comes up. If you don't see it there, there are links on the left that take you to frequently asked questions and different topics. But it is there. And the other thing is, if you have GuideStar Premium, go over to Articles. You don't even need GuideStar Premium this. On our site, at the top of the page, go to News, then go to Articles, and then on the left, scroll down and pick Compensation. And you will find interspersed in here like nonprofit compensation under the microscope from June 2009. It actually links to the IRS, the March 2007 report on nonprofit compensation, which is where the IRS recommended levying $21 million in excise tax assessments. And this article does link to the hospital study as well from 2009. And when you use one of those links and you get onto the site, and here we go. Here it is. You'll find other links as well. If CEO is a board member, how ensure no conflict of interest on executive compensation, which is part of the whole budget? CEO recuses himself from voting on budget. That would be my understanding. It's something you really need to check with an expert, though. But yes, I would think that the CEO would need to remove him or herself from the discussion and the decision making. Is there a way to search for all nonprofits working in another country with other search refinements? Not on GuideStar. Well, let me back it up. If they're registered as a U.S. nonprofit, registered with the IRS, you can search on the category of international, or you could search by country. If you are talking about organizations that are registered with another nation, no, we don't have that information. And what I would recommend is you go to GuideStar International, which you can Google, or go to that country's government site. I know Canada has, in their treasury or whatever their revenue department is called, they have a listing of charities. Are there other means of justifying compensation, say cost of living, etc.? And if so, how does GuideStar aid in that other than showing a history of compensation in those areas? Yes, and for cost of living, if what you need to do is justify a level of compensation because of cost of living, then what you need to do is do your research geographically, and show what is being paid in your area. We have a product called the GuideStar Nonprofit Compensation Report, which has information. It's pulled from the 990s. Let me show you a sample of the page. It pulls from the 990s. Our last one, the 2010 compensation report, 2011 compensation report is focused on FY 2011 data. And let me find you a sample here. What it does is presents aggregate data. And what you're going to see, when I get my little thingy to come up, is you have compensation by budget size, or you might have compensation data by budget size and gender, NTE major group and budget size, centile group, and then we have it geographically by state or by MSA. So you could basically, and you look here, Human Services in Abilene, Texas is based on, for CEOs at organizations with incomes of, total expenses of $500,000 or less. We had 5 examples. Here's your average, here's your median. And the reason he didn't give the full range from 10th to 90th percentile was we didn't have that. But that product will allow you to compensate. Or you can do the research yourself, research the same type of position in 2 different places and show, let's say you have 5 peers in your location. Show that across the board people are paid more in your location. And there are also cost of living studies. I unfortunately don't know of any, but you could document that as well. But basically for the IRS's purposes, you want to show what your peers are being paid, and peers can be defined by geography. Is it possible to compare ourselves to more than one NTE code? Our mission spans several. Yes, but you would have to do the search several times. Our search doesn't allow you to search multiple NTE codes at the same time. But that's a case where the category search might work better for you. With the category search, you actually can, just by, I don't want article details, I want my nonprofit search. There we go, nonprofit search, sorry about that. You actually can hold down your control key, and let's say that, well, you could do health all, but in this case, let's say you want addiction and substance abuse, and you want healthcare facilities and programs and medical disciplines, or we'll do mental health and crisis services. If you hold down your control key when you click on these categories, you can search on all 3 at once. If a nonprofit employees are part of a union and negotiate their own salaries in a contract, would this all still apply? I don't know. I mean, it just seems to me, tax exempt is tax exempt, but I know unions are a special case, and that is something where I would rely on the union's attorney for their opinion. And let's see, we have one more question, and then I'm going to have to wrap up. Are other fields other than those demonstrated able to be exported? No. In GuideStar Premium, they are not. GuideStar Premium subscriptions. We do have a service, custom data sets, where you can basically pick and choose from about an average of 300 fields from the 990, so around 300 fields to pick the ones you want. Custom data sets, though, are not as cost effective as GuideStar Premium search. And if only looking at budget size, what do you recommend to use in adjusting it for local economic factors? I'd say do a search on your geographic area and show some comparables. Perhaps not all of them should be receiving such a high level of compensation. It needs to be adjusted. Really what we have found is that mission is what affects expenses the most. The median program ratio for a food bank, the total percentage of expenses spent on program activities that carry out the mission. The median program expenses or program ratio for a food bank used to be something like 97%. And for an art museum, the median, which is dead center of the peer group, was something like 68 or 70%. And they could be located, mission has a tremendous impact. So I would start with mission. I probably, if I were researching compensation, would start geographically, as I did here, just for an example. If I'm not finding enough peers, then I might go nationally. It all depends on what the type of position you're filling is, or the type of position you're paying is, and what the market is like in your area. You may only need to research 3 peers, depending on your organization's annual income. You may only need to research 3 peer organizations in your area, and you may be home free. Or you may need to expand it regionally or nationally. The important thing is that once you have picked your peers, you have the data to show the IRS to be able to justify what you've done. Well, thank you for those excellent questions. I hope you found this session useful.